All right, guys, let's talk about some bare knuckle, man. They're back. Bare knuckle fighting championship 6 down in Tampa, Florida on Saturday. It is a pay-per-view, and I recommend you pony it up because they got themselves a stellar main event. And this is only their 6th show, and they got themselves a main event like that some promotions take years to build up to. And I got to credit us with having a little bit of a say in it because Paulie Malignaggi met David Feldman here on the set of MMA Junkie Radio a little less than a year ago, and guess what? They made a business transaction. He pulled him out of retirement, and now he's a former 2-time boxing champion. Now he's going to be headlining BKFC 6 versus Artem Lobov, former UFC lightweight, featherweight, and now the dance partner on Saturday. All right, guys, I do have some odds. Paulie Malignaggi minus 280, and Artem Lobov comes back at plus 220. Dan, Tom, what do you see going down here?
Wow, that's a pretty decent spread. I guess it depends on what you think. That could be either too wide or not wide enough, depending on who you're asking. It's interesting for me just because it is bare knuckle. Now, we've seen our MMA brethren, right, guys and gals, do pretty well in bare knuckle going over. It's a bit of a different technique. It's a bit of a learning curve, but I would argue the ones that kind of are attracted to it and stuck around for 1 or 2 matches, we've seen some progression there. So I'm really curious to see Artem Lobov again. Obviously, he put on that barn burner against Jason Knight.
That was a classic. That's another thing BKFC got lucky with was them just having they had their Bonner and Griffin early in their tenure.
Totally, and Lobov, man, he was really eating it up. I mean, he's eating some shots for sure, but he was eating up the experience, and I think that's actually going to serve him well. Hopefully he healed up from it because he's got Malignaggi on the other end. Now, Malignaggi is interesting because you're like, well, this should be a wash. He's a better striker, but, you know, people bring up the fragile hands, and he had that problem in his boxing game. But, you know, I would actually make the argument that a guy with fragile hands, maybe going in a bare-knuckle fight, even if it's a boxer, but in this case, not a boxer in Artem Lobov, though Lobov obviously did a lot of boxing training. I would argue it's good because it's going to make him more disciplined with his shots as far as picking it. You have to pick your shots in general with the lack of protection, especially a guy with hand problems. And let's look at Malignaggi's boxing record. The guy's only lost 8 times in his career. Only 5 of those have been by knockout. And if I look at the guys who are actually knocking him out, I mean, their names like Ricky Hatton, Amir Khan, Danny Garcia. And I know he went out off a title loss TKO over in England as well, but I mean, you look at the names of those fighters, and no disrespect to Artem Lobov, I don't know if I can put him in the same realm with those guys of the masters of the sweet science, you know, the Danny Garcias and Amir Khans of the world. So I don't know if Lobov's going to stop him, but I do think trying for that stoppage will be Lobov's best shot. I'm actually going to, I think Malignaggi is going to get a pretty clear-cut decision here. I think he's going to be pretty disciplined, but it's going to be more of an emotion for Malignaggi. I mean, we saw it on this show, guys, how he was acting. If he can keep his emotions in check, I think he gets the decision here.
Yeah, you know, Malignaggi, you know, the guys that box are light years ahead of anyone who just hasn't boxed. In fact, someone who's boxed and been a world champion is light years ahead of someone who just started off boxing or only got to golden gloves. I mean, there really, really is levels. Artem Lobov has to turn this into a street fight, per se. I'm talking about, like, be a little dirty. Think about Victor Ortiz against Floyd Mayweather, something like that.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe when they are clinched up and they have to break off, maybe get a cheap shot in there as well. Think about a hockey fight, a collar tie or something. I mean, he's going to have to do that, and maybe along the way, maybe, oh, I got you with my forearm, and just rough up Paulie so that Paulie becomes emotional and gets out of sweet science mode. But Paulie is just, this is something he's done for a young age at high level against other people that are throwing high level against him as well. I have to go with the advantage there. And the same thing, whereas if it was an MMA fight, I'd have to give Artem Lobov the advantage because Artem Lobov knows how to throw a kick or how to get a takedown or all the other techniques that we do see there. But I'm telling you, man, Lobov is a freight train. He just doesn't go away. I want to see if Paulie Malignaggi is able to work his way up from the body until he can finally either put him away or just win a decision. But along the way, just not get caught up in a firefight with Artem Lobov. So even though the MMA guy, I like to side with him at times.
Right.
I'll blur that line. This one's just one of those where I have to keep it real. I was first a fan of boxing before MMA even existed. So I have an appreciation for what great boxers can do, with techniques. And this isn't to say I know Lobov's boxed with boxers. I know he's picked up those techniques, but I think the fair thing would be to say it's the same thing. Whereas if Paulie Malignaggi were to slowly be learning techniques of MMA, you just haven't put in the time. It takes a while to get there. So I'm gonna go Paulie Malignaggi, especially if it goes to a decision. But if you wake me up and somehow I passed out from too many beers on fight night, because I will be ordering pay-per-view, and you say you're not gonna believe this, it was a knockout, I could believe Artem Lobov could get that, because dude's got power, he's a bigger dude. So I think that's his route, is just going for a KO. But the longer it goes, the more I favor Malignaggi.
Yeah, it ain't boxing and it ain't MMA. It's something completely new. You can train your hands for it, but you can't really get that sparring time. Artem Lobov, you hit the nail right on the head. His experience in doing this before, I think, is going to be very big in this type of fight, because you have a guy who's boxed his entire life, and being precise, that's going to help him out a lot in this if he can be patient. But Artem has this type of style that forces you to be sloppy. So if Paulie can kind of control his emotions and try and be precise and actually move around a little bit in that ring, I think he should be okay. But all you have is that small little wrap, right? And it would be like if you're just used to racing your entire life, and then they go, all right, ready for this race, take your shoes off, you're gonna go in your socks. You're gonna feel weird at first.
Yeah.
So it just depends. I think it's really in Paulie Malignaggi's court in regards to whether he can control his emotions and whether he can just kind of dial things down and slow the game down a little bit. I think he'll do okay. But if he lets his emotions get to him and he fights Artem's type of fight, that's going to be trouble, dude.
And Malignaggi, if I'm not mistaken, retired in 2017, right?
Yep, correct.
So
But
he
he
fought
looks
once
good.
in
He looks
2017, once in 2016, twice in 2015. Did not fight in 2018. So there's some ring rust there. Artem was just in a fight, so his timing will be good. But he was also in a war. He was also a little bit beat up. What do we say about those classics? Sometimes you lose a few miles off the, a little bit of tread off the tires. So, man, that's why you got to tune in. Look at all these variables, all these different factors in the fight on why both guys can win. Look, go MMA. No disrespect to Paulie, but I'm taking Paulie, and that's no disrespect to Artem. It's the most simple, respectful way I can put it to both guys. So there you have it. There's the breakdown for the main event of BKFC 6 this weekend. Get that pay-per-view. You're going to dig it. I'm telling you, these guys have not let us down just yet. Chris Lieben on the undercard as well.